My sister locked my son in a car to punish him over a chocolate bar. Her cruel act led to a shocking legal battle that no one saw coming. After my mother informed me that she had left my 6-year-old kid at home with my sister Laura, I went around hunting for him everywhere. Then, as I passed by Laura's car, an uncomfortable sensation overtook me. I leaned down and glanced through the glass, and what I saw inside chilled my blood. My kid, Ethan, was slumped down in the back seat. His small body didn't move. His face was glowing red, and his hair was drenched in sweat. I hastily reached for the door handle, but the car was locked. I yanked hard, hoping the door would open. My heart was racing in my chest, and all I could do was hope to God that my son would be well. Why was my son in Laura's car? What the heck happened? I just wanted to share the tale I am telling today. This is a narrative that reveals a grim reality. Money has the power to transform people's actual nature, including those with whom you share blood. Before I go into the details, I'd want to thank you for listening to our tale today. I wish you a calm day. Hello everyone. My name is Matthew, and I am 35 years old. I work as the business director for a real estate company in California. I'm a single father. My wife perished during the epidemic in 2020. She died when Ethan was just 2, leaving a hole inside me that nothing can fill. After my wife died, I put all of my love into my kid. That young child is the sole reason I get up every morning and struggle through life. Fortunately, my folks live nearby, only approximately 16 miles away. They have been quite helpful to me in caring for Ethan over the years, and I frequently send the little kid down with them on weekends when I need to meet with clients. My parents had 2 children. Aside from myself, there's my sister Laura. She also brings her daughter, Lily, to see her mother and father on weekends. Laura is 4 years younger than I am. She did not attend college and married rather young. Her husband has a regular job and makes little money, so their life has always been difficult. Previously our relationship was normal, not particularly tight but without big issues. But 2 years ago, things changed entirely. And I am certain of one thing. I will never, ever forgive her for what she did to my son. The family turmoil occurred over a weekend. In November 2023 my wife had been gone for 3 years, and my kid Ethan had just turned 6. That day, at 9 a.m., I dropped Ethan off at his parents' house and asked them to keep him while I went to see a client. As a real estate business director, I frequently meet with clients or customers on weekends. If a customer wishes to meet, I'm available at any time. The day before, I phoned Mom and Dad about minding Ethan, and they agreed immediately quickly. When I arrived at Mom and Dad's house that morning, Laura's car had already been parked in the driveway. Laura and Lily had been there since 7:30 according to their parents. Laura was not delighted when she saw me walk in. She gave me a quick glance, then turned around and walked into the living room without saying anything. That attitude bothered me, but I didn't give it much thought because I had an important meeting coming up. After holding Ethan, Mom rubbed my shoulder and said gently, "Don't worry. Just go handle your business. We'll take care of Ethan." Dad nodded in agreement and added, "Just focus on work. Ethan may remain here all day if necessary." I thanked Mom and Dad. Then I went down to embrace Ethan, kissed his forehead and told him, "Be good, okay? I'll be back in a little bit." Ethan nodded, that innocent smile spreading across his face as he whispered to me, "Yes, Dad. I'll be fine." I left feeling at ease, but throughout the journey I was restless and apprehensive. Something about Laura's gaze made me nervous, but I couldn't describe why. I had no clue my gut intuition would be confirmed in the most terrible way conceivable. After 3.5 hours of customer meetings, I returned to Mom and Dad's house about midday. The meeting went well and I had brought 2 chocolate pastries with me. One for Ethan and one for Lily. After parking, I observed that Mom and Dad's cars were not in the driveway, only Laura's. I stepped in and noticed Lily and Laura seated on the couch, watching television. Laura rolled her eyes and returned her attention to the television. What drew my attention was Lily's terrified expression. The small girl avoided eye contact with me in an unusual way, and I couldn't see my 6-year-old son anywhere. Walking past Lily and Laura, I moved through the house, opening doors and yelling out loud, "Ethan, where are you? Dad is home. I brought you chocolate cake." I phoned numerous times, but Ethan did not respond. At this time I assumed Ethan had gone out with my folks. I immediately took out my phone and contacted Mom. When I asked about Ethan, Mom said we left him at home with Laura. We went to the store to get some items and are now on our way back. During this time I began to feel worried. I puzzled why Mom and Dad agreed to care Ethan but then abandoned my kid with Laura. They knew Laura and I did not get along. I swiftly entered the living room and stood in front of Laura. I shouted, Laura, where's my son? Laura merely sat there on the couch, eyes fixed to the TV, and responded in an uncaring, chilly tone. I don't know, maybe the kids are playing in the backyard. After she said that, I ran around seeking for my son everywhere. Backyard, storage space, garden nook, and beneath tables. I cried out, Ethan, where are you? But there was no response from my kid. Then, as I passed by Laura's car, I had this unpleasant feeling, like if some unseen force was drawing me toward it. I took a step closer, leaned down, and peeked through the glass. What I saw inside made my blood turn cold. My kid, Ethan, was slumped down in the back seat. His face was very crimson. His lips were chapped and dried, and his hair was drenched with perspiration. His small body remained still, like a discarded toy. At that point, the world around me crumbled. I instantly grabbed the door handle and tugged hard. But the vehicle was locked. I yanked the door many more times, thinking it would spring open. I yelled, my voice choked with fright as I attempted to open the door. Ethan, this is Dad. Wake up, buddy. My heart was hammering in my chest. Cold sweat spilled all over my body. All I could do was pray to God that my son will be well. After numerous unsuccessful tries to yank the door, I lifted my hand and struck the window hard. 5 fists in a succession. Yet the glass remained unbroken, as if it were mocking me. My knuckles began bleeding, yet I felt no discomfort. Fear had eaten out all other sensations. I dashed into the home and shouted at Laura. Where are your car keys? Give them to me now. Laura remained immobile on the couch. Her gaze was fixed on the television screen and she responded in this alarmingly uncaring tone. Find them yourself. I don't remember where I put them. Laura's attitude at the time made me want to lose my head. But I forced myself to keep my anger under control because I knew that protecting my baby was the most essential thing at the time. Right after that, I dashed inside the storage area where Dad stored gardening tools and sports equipment. My gaze swiftly searched the collection of items and settled on a baseball bat. 10 seconds later, I dashed out of the storage room, baseball bat in hand. Laura got up as she saw me rush out. She yelled, Matthew, what are you doing? I ignored her cry and continued running for the door. When I arrived to the automobile, I stood square in front of the driver's side window. Laura had made it to the front porch by then. She cried loudly and frantically, Matthew, stop, the car keys are right here. But it was too late. I swung the bat hard against the windshield. Just 2 swings and the glass cracked, sending bits flying everywhere. I reached inside, ignored the wounds on my arm, and pressed the button to unlock the automobile doors. After the car doors were unlocked, I tossed the bat to one side, dashed to the rear seat, opened the door, and grabbed Ethan out of the mobile oven. My youngster was in a bad state. His skin felt very heated, as if he had a severe temperature. His respiration was faint, shallow, and fast. His lips were chapped and dried. His eyelids were clamped tight, and his entire body was saturated in perspiration, despite evidence of acute dehydration. The young kid became limp in my grasp, like a faded flower. My heart felt like it was being crushed. My voice choked as I whispered, Ethan, Dad's here. Open your eyes. Ethan, Dad's here. Don't leave me. I'm begging you. After hearing what I stated, Ethan slowly opened his eyes. His eyes were dull. He took a while to recognize me. He mumbled, his voice hoarse. Dad? I was so scared, Aunt Laura. Before he could continue his statement, Ethan collapsed in my arms again. I brought him to the front porch, where there was shade, and quickly dialed 911. As soon as the operator answered the phone, I reported my son's problem and requested an ambulance. After I provided them the address, the 911 operator stated that medical people would arrive shortly. Waiting for the ambulance took the longest time of my life. Every second seemed like a century. I prayed my wife's soul in heaven to look after our son. Laura and Lily were both standing on the front porch. Laura's face became cold as she noticed Ethan laying still. For the first time since I had returned home, I noticed worry on her face. But at the time, I didn't have the time or mental space to care about her. My son needs me. Less than 10 minutes later, the ambulance and medical staff arrived. 2 paramedics swiftly assessed Ethan's condition. They measured his temperature and examined his pulse. After checking his vital signs, they promptly loaded my kid into an ambulance and drove him to the hospital. I sat next to him in the ambulance, gripping Ethan's small hand tightly the entire while. The paramedics were continually monitoring his status, their looks strained yet concentrated. Ethan was transferred to the emergency department around 10 minutes later. The door shut in front of me, and all I could do was stand outside in the corridor, powerless and desperate. I sat in a frigid chair, my hands cradling my head. My imagination conjured visions of my son slumped down in the car. Images of his chapped lips and feeble voice. I prayed to God. I prayed to my wife. I prayed to anybody who could hear. Please save my son. 30 minutes later, the emergency room door opened. The doctor glanced at me, his expression softening, and said, "The little boy is out of danger. Fortunately, you found him and brought him in just in time." That was when I let out a sigh of relief. My legs nearly gave out from the relief. I clutched the doctor's hand hard, my voice muffled with sorrow. "Thank you, doctor. Thank you." Once I had calmed down, the doctor resumed his pronouncement. His voice became very serious. The hospital informed the police and Child Protective Services about the boy's condition. They'll be coming to gather information on the event once he's more stable tomorrow morning. After hearing what the doctor stated, I nodded and thanked him. I still couldn't see Ethan since he hadn't woken up yet. My parents came in the hospital corridor shortly after the doctor had departed. Their expressions were filled with horror. Both Mom and Dad seemed pallid as ghosts. I'm guessing they already understood what had transpired and how terrible the event was. When I saw them, I became enraged. I stood up straight, looked them in the eyes and said angrily, "You guys have the nerve to show up here." My mother fell into tears. She hurried up to hold my hands and sobbed, "Matthew, I'm so sorry. I didn't know things would turn out this bad." My father stood there, his face ashen. He attempted to remain cool, but his voice trembled as he told me, "We just went to the store for a while, and we thought leaving Ethan with Laura would be okay." Hearing those words, the rage within me erupted like fire. I moved Mom's hand away. My voice is as icy as ice. "Fine. You guys thought it would be fine. My son almost died. He almost died from being locked in a car under the sun for almost an hour. And you're telling me it would be fine?" My mother was breaking down. She continued saying, "I'm sorry." My dad remained silent. For the first time in my life, I realized he had nothing to say. I looked away, my voice icy. "Go home. I don't want to see you guys right now." However, they did not go. They just stood in a corner of the corridor, waiting for Ethan to wake up. I didn't look at them, but I knew they were still there, silent and regretful. I did notice Laura's absence. She did not show up at the hospital. Not one phone call or text message. 2 hours after arriving at the hospital, Ethan awoke. When the nurse told me, I raced inside the room. My son lay there with his eyes wide, staring about in uncertainty. But when he saw me, his eyes brightened up, and he shouted out weakly, "Dad!" I raced to his bedside, grabbed him, and couldn't stop crying. My voice strangled with passion. "My boy, Dad's here, Dad's here." After the doctor rechecked him and established Ethan's stability, my parents were permitted to visit. They stood at the foot of the bed, their expressions filled with grief. My mother went forward, her voice shaking as she told Ethan, "I'm sorry, sweetie. I failed to protect you." My father also spoke out, his voice thick and gruff. "I'm sorry, Ethan. I was irresponsible." I likewise stooped down and stared into my son's eyes, my voice heavy with regret. "Sorry, Dad, son. Dad wasn't there for you when you needed me." Ethan glanced at me, his eyes filled with anxiety. His voice was low as he told me, "Dad, I was so scared. Aunt Laura had locked me in the car." Ethan's statement stunned everyone in the room. My mother covered her mouth. My father stood there, his body like stone. I tried to remain cool, caressed his hair and softly murmured, "Don't worry. Dad's here now. You rest some more. You don't need to tell us everything right now." Ethan nodded, his eyes gradually closing from exhaustion. When he fell asleep, my father stepped next to me, his voice shaking but full of determination. "If Laura did this, I won't let it go. Even if she is my daughter, I will not forgive her." That night, all of us stayed at the hospital to care for Ethan, and I sat by his bed, holding his hand tightly all night, while my parents sat in chairs in the room. I didn't say anything to Dad because I was too exhausted to argue or blame anyone. The following morning, around 9 a.m., 2 police officers and a worker from Child Protective Services entered Ethan's special care room. Emily, a female worker from CPS, said to me in a gentle and patient tone, "We need to take a statement from Ethan about what happened." After I encouraged him, Ethan bravely told them everything. His voice was still shaking, but he tried to explain every detail clearly. He said to them in a soft voice, "When Grandpa and Grandma went out to the store, I saw a chocolate bar sitting on the kitchen counter. I asked Aunt Laura if I may have the chocolate bar, but she declined. She said it belonged to Lily. Ethan paused for a moment, his eyes looking at me as if he was looking for comfort. I nodded encouragingly and he continued. I wanted the chocolate so bad that I took that chocolate bar and ate it even though Aunt Laura didn't agree. Hearing Ethan's words, the CPS worker took careful notes, occasionally nodding to encourage him to continue. After a few seconds of silence, Ethan continued his story, his voice getting smaller. When Aunt Laura found out, I cried and apologized to her, but she wouldn't accept it. Then Aunt Laura dragged me out to her car and pushed me into the back seat. I begged her to forgive me, but she wouldn't listen, and she locked the doors. Before closing the door, she told me, Ethan, you need to be taught a lesson. My mother burst into tears when she heard that my father had pampered you much too much. She had to cover her mouth with her hand to keep from crying out loud. My father's hands were clenched into fists, and his face was red with rage. I wasn't doing much better. Every word my son said was like a knife stabbing into my heart. If I weren't busy caring for Ethan, and the cops weren't there, I'd rush to Laura's house and give her what she deserved. After a few seconds of quiet to gather his composure, Ethan spoke again, his voice weak and broken. I sat in the car. The temperature rose quickly. I yelled aloud and knocked on the windows, but no one answered the door. I shouted for Aunt Laura, but she did not come out. I became so exhausted and heated. I can't recall what occurred after that. I remember when I woke up, I was lying on a bed with doctors examining me. After hearing everything Ethan told us, the room fell silent, and I hugged my son tightly, trying to hold back the rage that was boiling inside me. My mother was crying quietly, and my father stood there like a statue, but I could see his body shaking with rage. After Ethan's statement, the police and CPS worker proceeded to take statements from my parents and me right there in that room. I told them everything from when I got home, found Ethan in the car and rushed him to the emergency room. My parents also told their part, admitting that they went to the store and left Ethan at home with Laura without asking my opinion. After hearing everything, the CPS worker looked at my parents with serious eyes and told them, "You two will also be involved in this case because you accepted responsibility for watching the boy, but then abandoned him, allowing Laura to harm him." My parents made no attempt to avoid responsibility. My father stood up straight, his voice low but clear. "We're ready to accept full responsibility, including going to jail. We ask for one thing. Don't prevent us from seeing our grandchild." My mother nodded, tears still streaming down her cheeks, and said, "We see we were wrong. We accept any consequence." Seeing my parents recognize their error made me feel a bit touched within. Unlike Laura, who deliberately locked my son in the car as punishment, the police and CPS did not have a malicious intent to harm my son. One of the two officers looked at me with understanding but serious eyes as they prepared to leave after taking all of our statements. He told me, "I realize you're upset, but I have to implore you not to take any retribution on Laura." Even though I truly wanted to seek vengeance on Laura, I knew the officer wasn't fooling around, and I didn't want Ethan to have a father who was in prison. And worse, if I went to jail, I'd lose custody of my son. I forced myself to remain calm, swallowing the rage that was boiling inside me. I had no idea that in just a few days, someone would teach Laura a lesson she'd remember for the rest of her life. 2 days later, the CPS worker returned to the hospital to document information about Ethan's health condition. Emily, the CPS worker I'd met before, informed me that she and the police had gone to Laura's house to take her statement. She sat down next to Ethan's bed where he was sleeping, and quietly told me, "Matthew, I want to update you on the progress of the case." I nodded, bracing myself for what I was about to hear. Emily continued. "At first, Laura denied everything because your parents' house doesn't have security cameras. She blamed Ethan, saying that the little boy had gotten into the car to play by himself and locked himself in. She even accused you of being behind it and directing Ethan to lie. She made up this story that you always hated her. So, you did this to get revenge." I couldn't say anything when I heard what Emily was telling me. Anger and disgust rose inside me. How could someone use an innocent child and then turn around and blame that same child? But what Emily said next surprised me. Her voice softened slightly, but those lies were exposed by an unexpected witness. Emily claimed, "Lily, Laura's 7-year-old daughter, informed the police her mother was lying." My heart appeared to skip a beat. Lily, that tiny kid, had risen up to tell the truth, even though she knew it would upset her own mother. Emily added, "And what Lily told us matched exactly what Ethan had stated." Mia confirmed that her mother had locked Ethan in the car after Ethan ate the chocolate bar. The little girl even said she tried to beg her mom to let Ethan out, but Laura wouldn't listen. Hearing those words, complex emotions surged through me. Relief that the truth had been revealed. Heartbreak for Mia. A 7-year-old who had to testify against her own mother, and rage at Laura for putting her own daughter in that situation. I was relieved that the truth had been revealed, but the pain and fury remained, smoldering like hot coals under ash, as I watched my son sleep peacefully in Ethan's care room. Emily promised me that the criminal trial would take place soon, and that Ethan would receive justice. I also reminded you that you should not take vengeance against Laura. After 4 days in the hospital, Ethan had fully recovered, and we were able to return home. My parents arrived to pick us up that day, but instead of taking us home as I expected, they turned in a different direction. I recognized the road leading to Laura's house, and after parking in front of it, Dad got out and brought a large bag. I had no idea what Dad had brought inside. He just looked at me with resolute eyes and said, "You and Ethan, follow me into the house. Let me handle everything." Laura's face paled as she saw us arrive, and she stopped at the entrance, mouth wide but unable to say anything. My parents strode directly into the living room, without waiting for her permission. I led Ethan by the hand behind them. In the living room, Dad placed the bag on the table and opened it, revealing a massive pile of chocolate bars, which I estimated to be nearly 180. He turned the bag upside down, and the chocolate bars spilled out onto the table. Dad looked straight at Laura's face. Laura's face turned pale as she stammered, her voice trembling. "Eat all of it? How could I possibly consume it all?" Dad's voice tightened. "You were ready to lock Ethan in a car for one chocolate bar and nearly kill him. Now I've bought chocolate for you to consume." Laura began to scream and beg. "Dad, I can't eat all of them. Please, Dad." My mother intervened and I expected her to defend Laura as usual, but I was mistaken. She aimed her finger at Laura's face, her voice frigid, and said, "If you don't eat, don't call us Mom and Dad anymore." Laura collapsed, dropped to her knees in front of my parents, tears flowing down her face, and then her shaky hands picked up chocolate bars one by one and began eating them. My father stood there saying, "Eat quicker. I purchased about 180 chocolate bars for you." Laura was weeping as she ate. After approximately 30 bars, she couldn't eat anymore. Her face was green, and she looked like she was going to vomit. Dad continued saying, "Keep eating." "There's still enough left," Laura replied, her voice choking between sobs. "Dad, I was mistaken. I was mistaken. I can't eat anymore." Lily bolted out of the bedroom. The young girl went to my father, her eyes red and swollen, her little voice asking, "Grandpa, please forgive my mother. My mom understands she was wrong." My father gazed down at Lily, his expression softening somewhat, and he knelt down to touch the young girl's head before hugging her and saying nothing further. The room fell silent. Only Laura's sobbing echoed. About 5 minutes later my father stood up, looked at Laura with eyes full of pain and disappointment, and said to her, "I'm sorry, but from now on, you're not my daughter anymore." Laura lifted her head, her eyes swollen from crying, and Dad continued, "You haven't apologized to Ethan once since I walked in. What I needed was not for you to consume chocolate. What I wanted was for you to apologize to Ethan, but you didn't." Laura rushed over and hugged my father's legs, crying and begging, "Dad, don't forsake me. I was mistaken. I'm sorry." My father shoved her away from his legs, his expression as frigid as stone. Laura appeared to comprehend something, and she hastily came up to Ethan, knelt in front of my kid, her voice choking. "Ethan, I'm sorry. I was mistaken. I'm sorry." Ethan glanced up at me, his eyes filled with uncertainty and worry. I didn't say anything, just gripped his hand securely and went out of the home. When the judge inquired about the true reason for locking Ethan in the car, Laura finally confessed the truth in a small, trembling voice. "I did it to get revenge on my brother." And the entire courtroom fell silent. I had managed not to beat the hell out of Laura, and I was hoping that the law would protect my son. A few seconds later the judge said, "Revenge for what?" Laura hung her head, her voice choking. 2 months ago, I asked him to lend me $125,000. But he refused. The judge looked at her in disbelief. Hearing those words made me sick to my stomach. I had that money, but I couldn't lend it because it was what I planned to use for Ethan's future, his education, his life later on. Laura was sentenced to 13 years in jail after being found guilty of willfully hurting a kid and endangering a child's life. Because I refused, Laura took her rage out on my innocent child. The court made the decision after evaluating all of the facts and testimony. Laura had to pay Ethan $250,000 in compensation, which included medical costs, psychological trauma treatment costs, and emotional damage compensation. After the judge announced the sentence, Laura was led away, and as she passed where I was sitting, she looked at me with regretful eyes, but I turned away. My parents, who had agreed to watch Ethan and then abandoned him, were also punished by the judge. They were barred from having any contact with Ethan for a year, and they were required to take child care responsibility classes. My mother sobbed when she heard the decision, and my father simply nodded in acquiescence. His face saddened, but he said nothing. When I left the courthouse, I felt relieved that justice had been done and that my kid had been safeguarded. It's been more than 2 years since that dreadful day. Ethan, who is now 8 years old and has undergone numerous therapy sessions to overcome his trauma, was initially terrified of cars, particularly black cars like Laura's. He also had nightmares and would wake up in the middle of the night crying and calling my name. However, with the therapist's patience and my love, Ethan gradually recovered. After the contact ban was lifted, my parents came to see me and apologized once more. After a year of deliberation, I decided to forgive them. They had made a mistake, but they had not done so maliciously. They had paid for it, and more importantly, they truly regretted it. After I forgave them, they came to see us on a regular basis, and Ethan loved seeing Grandpa and Grandma. Laura, on the other hand, has been in prison for 3 years, and none of us went to see her. My parents had disowned her, as they had promised, and she was no longer their daughter. Laura's daughter, Lily, is being cared for by her father. On weekends, Lily still visits my parents' house and she and Ethan continue to play together. I don't blame Lily. She's just an innocent child, and she bravely told the truth to save Ethan. Through this story, I have some advice for you. First, teach your children how to protect themselves at a young age. To ensure your child's safety, you should teach them how to unlock car doors from the inside. Additionally, you should never leave your child alone in a car for even a minute, as the temperature inside can quickly rise and become life-threatening. Finally, you should exercise caution when leaving your child in the care of others, including relatives. When I tell this story, many people believe I did the right thing by refusing to lend Laura money, and I have the right to protect my child's assets. However, others believe I am to blame for the tragedy, claiming that if I had lent Laura the $125,000, none of this would have happened.